أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Shab-e-Jumah program. Inshallah, we'll start our program with the recitation of Hadith Kisa followed by Dua Kumail and a brief lecture. For Hadith Kisa, I would invite Brother Maulana Haider to start us off. Bismillah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه. يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه. السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء، ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم، أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم
اللهم
صل
صل على محمد وعلى
على
بسم الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعزمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته، وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني، وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت طاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعزم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عزم سلطانك وعلى مكانك، وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك، وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي، وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاضح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت اللهم عزم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب والشدة أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهب لي صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملاها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أزهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حزي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها بردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوم على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارده، ومن كادني فقده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخسهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني أثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي، يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء، يا سابغ النعام، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل به ما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم صل على محمد
محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت.
وعجل فرجه.
جزاك الله. Thank you very much for that recitation. Inshallah, let's remember those who are in need of dua, going through a difficult time physically, financially, spiritually, struggling during this COVID period. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of those people who are in need of du'as shafa'a ajila wa kamila, inshallah, bihaqq Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's recite this dua from Surah Namal together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. صدق الله. Also, let's recite Surah Fatiha for all of our deceased marhumin, mu'mineen, mu'minat, and the sponsors of tonight's program. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The verse that I recited is from Surah Kahf, ayat number 13. And the reason I chose this ayat tonight for tonight's discussion, for the past few weeks, we've been either going through Ayyam Fatimiyya Majalis or Isa al-Sawab Majalis. And this week there wasn't any. And therefore, I thought it would be important as we go through this phase of our life. Constantly, we need to remind ourselves of the challenges that we face, struggles that we have, obstacles that we have in front of us. And a lot of time as we grow older, we cope with these difficulties and we somehow come out of it. But the younger you are and you haven't experienced much, the more you're, there's a possibility of drowning into the difficulties that surround us. And a lot of time people end up seeing that there isn't any way out. Unfortunately, the rising rate of suicide is also found in younger generation, which are all alarming sign that there's a great deal of responsibility that lies on the parents in order for them to be able to guide their kids, their children to the right path. Now, a lot of time we rely for these sort of tasks, and we leave that to their schools, their places of education, whether secular or Islamic, the houses of worship, the masjid imam bargas, the institutions, the religious institutions where they attend. So yes, if they attend, then you definitely see any difference. But if a person hasn't seen the face or hasn't visited, hasn't been around, or is only frequent, or very seldom do they visit the imam bargas and masajid in normal times, of course I'm speaking. And when they don't visit, then of course they won't be able to benefit from what is being given over there, and therefore there's a possibility that there's a higher rate of these sort of activities in them. I chose this ayat of Surah Kahf, ayat number 13, which says, "Nahnu naqussu alayka naba'ahum bilhaq," that we relate to you their account in truth. And they were indeed youths who had faith in their Lord, and we had enhanced them in guidance, and we had fortified their hearts. These last two are definitely favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were given to them because of what they did earlier. They were indeed youths that had faith in their Lord, as the ayat said. Innahum fityatun amanu bi rabbihim. And then the next two things that Allah mentions, He says, we enhance them in guidance and we fortify their hearts. Both are necessary. A lot of people receive the guidance, but they're not mutahammil. That means they're unable to bear the weight of the guidance, right? Guidance just is not enough they're not able to absorb it. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about two of these favors, that not only we enhanced them in guidance, but we also fortified their hearts. Because at that age, they are really in need of it, and they're able to, if it was someone older, they would have been able to cope with it differently based on their experiences. But being youth, they needed both of these supports. I don't know how true this is. Medically, physicians will tell us, or even if it's true or not, that the physical heart that we have, the older the heart is, the more chance there is of survival of a heart attack. Now, of course, it might not be qaida kulliya, the rule of thumb, but at least what we have heard, and again, as I said, physicians will be able to verify this. The younger the heart is, and if it faces a heart attack for variety of reasons, it may not be able to bear that heart attack, even if it may be mild. Now, it may just be facts based on few studies that have come about, but rarely do you see that younger people have heart problems. Older people usually do develop these issues. But the older a person is, they're more mutahammil. They're capable of bearing this attack, and fortunately, they're able to come out of it. But unfortunately, the younger the heart is, at least that's how I have heard. And again, the physicians will verify if there's any truth in it. But coming back to our topic, today I want to share some moral virtues from the life of a youth. Because the discussion in the Surah Kahf, is about fitiyatun, which is a plural for youths. It is a plural for fata. Remember that when Dhul Faqar was given to Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib والسلام, and you recite this, that La fata illa Ali, La sayf illa Dhul Faqar, that there's no youth like Ali, and there's no sayf and there's no sword like Dhul Faqar. And this is another Ali, Hazrat Ali Akbar. Now his wiladat is in the month of Shaban that we do celebrate. But tonight, because it is related to the topic that I'm speaking of, I thought he would be the best example. He was son of course, our third Imam, Imam Hussein, and his mother's name has been mentioned as Layla, daughter of Maimuna, and from the maternal side, going up to Abu Sufyan, and from the paternal side going up to the family of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Although he was not an Imam, but was the possessor of high morals and a standard and a role model for the youths of all ages. They can associate themselves with him to attain the similar moral attributes, to tread the path of prosperity and salvation. A lot of time when we speak of Imams and Masumeen, usually we end the discussion by saying, oh, they were Imams, they were Masumeen, they were infallibles. Although they were infallibles, but they're still a complete role model and example for us. But then you have people like Hazrat Ali Akbar, who may not be part of the lineage of the Imamat or amongst the Imams or the infallibles, but lived a life which is a perfect life, which had infallibility in it, because grew up surrounded by infallibles. So you and I can relate because of the not being ma'asum from that aspect, and not being Imam from that aspect. So we'll share a few moral virtues from the life of Hazrat Ali Akbar, descriptively as well as analytically. So we'll look at it from two perspectives, based on the historical events, of course, and the authentic traditions that we have received about him. The results of this, analysis of his moral virtues are the true reflection of his grandfather. And it is the reflection of his own taqaddus and grandeur, his exalted personality, from the aspect of a complete resemblance that he possessed, that he had with the noble prophet. So it makes him a popular and epic role model for all of us. In a preface, I want to say that, today our youth in our societies need such a role model, when they can imitate in all walks of life. But not every role model is worthy of following. When you look at today's role models, a lot of people will deny that they don't consider so-and-so to be the role models. But unfortunately, when you do things based on someone's attributes or someone's style, then you're following them, whether it be your hairstyle, whether it be the way you talk, the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself. You're resembling someone. And if those people are noble, then of course you will portray those noble traits. But if those people are not really noble, then of course there will be signs of that shown in you. So the role model has to be aligned with Islamic teachings in all different dimensions of one's behavior. So definitely these ball players and these singers, these popular celebrities could not fit this criteria at all. Unfortunately, our youth, not all, some are inclined, they are followers. Now there's a way of following on different social media outlets, but that does not make you a follower of someone if you're just merely following. I'm sure if you've seen that many of us, millions of people were following the previous president on his Twitter account before it was, of course, removed, just so that we can see what he has to say, but not necessarily that we were his followers. So coming back to our topic, Hazrat Ali Akbar, son of Imam Hussein, is a prime example of the role model we're searching for, especially in our youth years, who was at the heights of moral virtues. Even if he was not an imam, he possessed the virtues that separated him from the inhabitants of the earth. Hazrat Ali Akbar is one of the cornerstones of the events of Ashura and Karbala. He stood firmly against oppression and defended his faith till the last breath. In this, brief life of ours that we have been given. Now, Hazrat Ali Akbar's life was also very brief, 18 years maybe. Some mention that he was older than Imam Zain al-Abidin, so maybe 22, 23 years old. But in all scenarios, it was not a very long, lengthy life. Similarly, in our brief lives, the short leash that we have to do good. Therefore, one must count every moment given to them to do any good that is possible for you, because there's a very short life that's been given. On the other hand, we only get to live once. In this world, you don't get to come back. No matter how much we try, we're not getting a second chance. Ayat of Quran, Surah Mu'minun, ayat number 99 is very clear about it. حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُهُمُ الْمَوْتِ قَالَ رَبِّ ارْجِعُونِي لَعَلِّي أَعْمَلُ صَالِحًا فِيمَا تَرَكْتُ. That, when the maut comes to one of them, they say, "Oh Lord, return me so that I may perform good deeds." Now, this person is asking for respite when the death comes upon, because there's still life on earth. But of course, you're not getting a second chance. Ayat continues by saying this is just his, a desperate plea, but it's not going to come true. So one might question over here, when we are making the personality of Hazrat Ali Akbar والسلام, to be a role model for us, how can we follow someone who lived 1400 years ago, right? So Shahadat is in the 61 year after Hijrah. We are right now in 1442. So in about 20 years time, it'll be the 1400 anniversary of the events of Ashura. So 1400 years ago, how can we follow someone who lived 14 centuries ago? The answer is very simple. Reality of life has not changed over the centuries. Lifestyles might be different today than they were before, but we were born for a purpose, and that is to live a prosperous life and to attain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That purpose still remains the same. 14 centuries ago, it was the same purpose, and even today it's the same purpose. The set of principles have not changed. Neither they have expired or been replaced by something else. Those codes of conducts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down to humanity in this book called Quran, through the tongue of the noble Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're unchanged. They cannot be altered. They cannot be replaced with something else. So those principles are the same. They have not changed. They have not expired. There is not Quran, and I've said this before as well, and the kalam of Ma'asumin, it does not have any expiry date. They'll be there till the day of judgment. So therefore, a man who lived 14 centuries ago can still serve as the best role model for you in what you're trying to achieve, which is eventually to get to this prosperous state and salvation and najat. So they would be the best role model that you can imagine. Second aspect of the discussion is the moral virtues. The word which is used in Arabic is fadail. We're accustomed to that word because we are accustomed to hearing the fadail of ma'asumin. Fadail is the plural of fadila, which means level of greatness, superiority, distinction. So ma'asumin have a level of greatness, superiority over us, and distinction that they possess. The opposite of it is radila, which is the plural of which is radail. So whoever stood in front of the ma'asumin throughout the history could be referred to as those who possess these sifate razila or radail, meaning inferiority and deficiency. So that's as far as the word fadail is concerned. Second word that we need to look at is the word akhlaq. The plural is the plural of khuluq, meaning morals. And therefore you have the sentence or the istilah or terminology, sayyi al-khuluq means bad morals, or su'ul khuluq, bad morals. We also use the word sahlul khuluq, which means soft or good-natured. So these are different istilahat that are used. So the most resembling person to the fadail and the akhlaq of Rasulullah, noble Prophet, Prophet Muhammad, that is referred to as Hazrat Ali Akbar. Prophet himself was at the peak of ethical standards that we can imagine. Quran talks about it. In Surah Qalam, chapter 68, ayat number 4 says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that you possess the highest standard of morality. Hazrat Ali Akbar possessed the same attributes according to many authentic traditions. He had inherited them to the fullest, even if he was not an Imam Masum. He resembled the noble prophet physically and as well as in his morality, to the extent that we read in traditions the following, that whenever someone wanted to do the ziyarat of Rasulullah, they would look at the face of Hazrat Ali Akbar. When Imam Hussein intended to send his son to the battlefield in Karbala, he uttered these noble words. He said with, I'm sure, a very heavy heart. He said, Allahumma ashhad ala ha'ula'il qawm. فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك محمد. That Allah be a witness upon these people. Indeed, a servant of yours is going towards them who resembles most, ashbahun nase, amongst all the people, who resembles the most, khalqan, as far as his features, physical features are concerned, khulqan, as far as his akhlaq are concerned, wa mantaqan, as far as his speech is concerned, bi rasulika Muhammad, to your prophet, to your messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Imam said something. He said, Kunna idha ishtaqna ila nabiyyika nazarna ila wajhi. And whenever we longed for the ziyarat of Rasulullah, we felt like that we wanted to look at the face of, today you have the pictures. So pictures are taken, you capture these moments of your life by video and with these pictures that you take. And of your deceased, you look at the pictures. You look at the pictures of your grandparents, for example, if they're no longer alive. Or anyone in your family members who have passed away, you remember them by looking at their pictures. So you have that possibility today. They didn't have that possibility back in the day. So Imam Hussein is saying, Kunna idha ishtaqna ila nabiyyika nazarna ila wajhihi. Whenever we were mushtaq didar, we wanted to see the face and remind ourselves of what Rasulullah looked like, we would look at the face of Hazrat Ali Akbar. And then Imam made this dua. He said, Allahumma imna'ahum bi barakatil ard wa farriqhum tafriqan wa mazziqhum tamziqan. Of course, this is coming from the heart, that, oh Allah, keep the blessings away from this land or these people, who are in this land standing up against us. Scatter their congregation, cause them to disunite so that their awliya are not satisfied with them. These people invited us here to help them, and now they are opposing us. So Imam then made this dua. But the point was that the beginning part, and there is a similar tradition that quotes Imam Hussein slightly with different words, that when Hazrat Ali Akbar went to the battlefield, after Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil, Imam Hussein cried and he said this, Allahumma kuna anta shaheed alayhim, faqad baraza ilayhim ibn rasulik, wa ashbahu nas wajhan wa samtan bihi. That Allah be a witness that the son of Rasulullah, the son of Prophet Muhammad, is advancing toward the enemies and he most resembled Rasulullah in his appearance, of course, how he looked, and in his path, in his way, in his samt, wajhan wa samtan bihi. So why all of these comparisons are being made? One of the reasons is because Hazrat Ali Akbar is not an ordinary person. He possessed what is called a religious basirat, insight, basirat dini. That's what he possessed. And a person could be mutadayyin, religious, but may not have basirat dini. Therefore, this basirat is something which comes from pondering and contemplation. Basirat literally means insight, having a heart that is alive. Now, hearts are very important. Quran talks about it, that use these hearts. تَفَقَّهُ فِيهِ فَإِنَّهُ رَبِيعُ الْقُلُوبِ. He said, ponder upon it, this Quran, right? And use this Quran, ponder upon it. Why? Because it has what? Hiya hayatun lil qalbil mayyat. Because Quran, the wisdom that it possesses, the knowledge that it has, are life for the dead hearts. So a lot of time what happens that our hearts, they die. We might be walking around, but the hearts are dead. And there are so many ayat in this reference, لَيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا, and so on and so forth, that talk about the dead hearts. So basirat means having a heart that is alive. Raghib, in his mufradat, he says basirat and the word basar are synonyms for ma'rifat and dark. Ma'rifat, the gnosis or the recognition. Dark is comprehension. He said these two are basically the meaning of the word basirat and basar. Moreover, one of the meanings of this word is knowledge as well. Because Tabarsi, under the following verse from Surah Yusuf, ayat number 108, when Hazrat Yusuf says, Adu'u ila Allahi ala basiratin ana. Say, this is my way, and I summon to Allah with insight, I and he who follows me. He considers, Tabarsi considers it to be ma'rifat, an awakening of the heart, the consciousness of the heart. So that's what the word basirat means. Basirat is the most obvious ethical virtue and an element that leads to many other virtues. You know, if you have this, then a lot of other doors might open for you, since it directs us to the reality. Well, a man without basirat is unable to see the reality, let alone facing it. So when you have basirat, you have a heart that is alive, by which you can ponder and think. You're able to face the consequences. You're able to face the difficulties of the life better. But if the heart is lacking basirat, it's lacking that insight, then forget about facing it. You know, you're unable to see the reality of it as well. And of course, that makes it even further more difficult. So not only that he had basirat dini, religious basirat, Hazrat Ali Akbar, but he also possessed what is called basirat akhlaqi, the this insight when it comes to the ethics and morality. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Absar al-nas man absara uyubahu wa aqla'a an dunubihi. He said the most insightful of mankind is the one who is able to see and recognize and diagnose his own defects, and one who is able to remove his own sins. So a lot of time we have this veil which does not even enable us to see what's inside of our hearts. While we'll be able to see what's easily associated with others, and the defects of others become so easily comprehensible for us, but we're unable to see the defects that lie within our own hearts, although we are the closest to our hearts. So this is where, any businessman, any alim, any driver, etc. You look at all of the professions. Everyone must have basirat in their work. It will decrease hurdles for them. I cannot be good at something without proper insight. That's why these kalam of Masumin, each one of these require us to write it with gold and hang it on our walls. Imam says, "Innama awhamul qulub akbaru min absar al-uyun, wa minhu qawlu ta'ala wa ma yastawi al-ama wal basir." He said, the awhamul qulub, that which you imagine through your hearts, because there's no limit to your imagination, are bigger, akbar, superior, min absar al-uyun, that which you see through your eyes. So the word absar, basar, is used, sight. But that which you see through your hearts, the awham, the imagination, there's no limit to that. But what you see through your eyes, of course, it's limited. First of all, your eyes have to be correct. Second, there should not be an impediment in front of you. Thirdly, you can only see to a certain distance. But with these hearts, you're able to see further and further away. So Hazrat Ali Akbar is one of the most prominent examples of Basirat in Karbala. I may not be able to get into all of the examples that I have for him, but I'll share a couple of them and I'll conclude. There is the most prominent examples. When Imam Hussein's caravan, for example, when it arrived in the place known as Tha'labiyya, so there were different manazil that Imam went through from Makkah to Medina. And when they stopped at this place, Tha'labiyya, Imam took a short nap. They were all, taking some rest. Imam took a rest as well, and he saw a dream. Now I just want you to focus on the basirat and the insight of Hazrat Ali Akbar in his kalam. When Imam woke up, he said this: سمعت حاطفا يقول أنتم تسرعون والمنايا تسرع بكم إلى الجنة. Of course, Imam woke up from his dream. He said, I've heard a voice which is telling me that you are hurrying. أنتم تسرعون. You're rushing to something. You're going forward with something. You're hurrying. And the death is hurrying. وَالْمَنَايَا تُسْرِعُ بِكُمْ. And the death is hurrying you towards paradise. And of course, it's a good sign of what Imam has seen. But what it entails is that eventually you're going to die. That's what you're headed to. So upon hearing this, Hazrat Ali Akbar, he asked a very contemplative question. Ya Abba, afalasna al haq? Oh dear father, are we not on the path of haq, the truth? Imam replied, Bala. Ya bunayya, walladhi ilayhi marji'ul ibad. Of course, my son. And to him shall all return. We are on the path of haq. We are on the path of justice. We are on the path of providing salvation to mankind, reviving the rights that have been destroyed. And we will give our lives in this path. Hazrat Ali Akbar then said, Ya Abba, idhan la nubali bil maut. Oh my father, in that case, we don't care about death, especially a death which is in the form of shahadat, which is telling us that this manaya is taking you to the paradise. La nubali bil maut. These are the words of Hazrat Ali Akbar. Ya Abba, idhan la nubali bil maut, which I can literally translate as, oh father, in that case, I don't care about death. We don't care about death if it comes upon us because of the end. So here you can see the basirat of a youth, that 18, 20, 22, maybe whatever the age that you go by, that he's thinking in those lines. And of course, it has to do with the tarbiyah that he's given in that household, but he serves as a role model for us. So therefore, we can take it from his lifestyle. By asking this question, Hazrat Ali Akbar displayed his immense basirat in religion. He informed everyone that the path of al-Bayt is established on haqq and truthfulness. The second aspect of his life is izzat-e-nafs, his self-esteem. I won't be able to get into too much of this, the third part of it, so I'll just go through this one. Inshallah, we'll end and we'll continue next week. Of course, self-esteem is one of the ethical values. It gains more value when a person is facing an imminent threat or does not change the course of his or her actions due to their desire. So you're facing some sort of threat and you remain firm, steadfast because of the izzat that you possess, the honor that you have, self-esteem. Now this, take it, I don't know if the self-esteem would be the good translation of it, izzat-e-nafs. Because if a person is lacking this izzat-e-nafs, this integrity and this self-esteem, they can easily withdraw from their principles and they can easily compromise. The ethical virtue, this ethical virtue becomes a bad trait, especially when a person is in the leadership role and flees the scene, right? Then it becomes a really bad attribute. When Hazrat Ali Akbar was surrounded by a large number of enemies, he didn't back down for a moment. You would say, well, he didn't have a choice, right? He was going to get killed anyway. No, he had the choice. There was, in fact, when he was offered immunity by the forces of Yazid, who said to them, you are one of us, meaning due to your familial relations. Remember in the beginning, I told you that because from his mother's side, his mother, and his grandmother. Then the relationship to grandmother goes up to Abu Sufyan, and the relationship from the grandfather's aspect, his mother's father, and that aspect goes to Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. So they said because of the relationship to Abu Sufyan, and of course Abu Sufyan is grandfather of Yazid, and because of that relationship, they said, you join us because you're one of us. He disregarded their immunity, and he said what? He said, لِقَرَابَةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أَحَقُّ أَن تَرْعَى مِنْ قِرَابَةِ يَزِيدِ بْنِ مُعَاوِيَةَ. Who needs relationship with Yazid ibn Muawiyah when I'm related to Rasulullah? Now you can say this, but you won't save your life. Or you can take this immunity and go ahead and save your life. So it'd be very easy for him to walk away from all of this. Hazrat Ali Akbar advanced to the battlefield. After getting this immunity, he advanced to the battlefield reciting the following rajas. He said, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali. Nahnu wa baytillahi awla bin Nabi. I'm Ali, son of Hussein, son of Ali. We, the Bayt of Allah, are closest to the Nabi. And then he says, Wallahi la yahkumu fina ibn Da'i. That of course, this person, Ibn Da'i, is referring to Yazid. He's not going to be, deciding or doing hukum upon us or making judgments for us. أطعنكم بالرمح حتى ينفى أضربكم بالسيف أحمي أن أبي. I will strike you with my safe so that I can do himayat of my father. ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. A strike which is from a servant, a person, a youth rather, who's Hashimi and who's Alavi. Ibn Asakir narrates in his book, this account that a man from Syrians and from Sham, he called upon Hazrat Ali Akbar, whose mother was daughter of Abu Murra ibn Urwa, and the relationship that I mentioned, daughter of Mamuna, daughter of Abu Sufyan, said, you are related to Amir al-Mu'mineen, referring to Yazid. You are free to go wherever you want to. Hazrat Ali Akbar responded, beware and know that respecting the relations with Rasulullah is better than respecting the relations of Abu Sufyan. He then attacked and he recited the same rajas. So self-esteem is a trait which keeps people from backing down when they should actually step up. A person with insight will never forego his self-esteem and high objectives for the petty desires that exist in this world. Based on this narration, Hazrat Ali Akbar confronted that huge army when he had the means to avoid and save his own life. I'll stop over here because there's more to the legacy of Hazrat Ali Akbar, and it will not be justice if I went along without properly giving time to all of that. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed these are difficult times. Maybe dhikr of few words about Hazrat Ali Akbar and his shahadat, that the 18-year-old or 20-year-old, whatever the age, as I said, you take, indeed is one of the most difficult shahadat in Karbala for Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein, who's busy picking up the bodies of his companions, of course, with the help of the youth of Ahlul Bayt. But now when the turn comes, some mention that he was the first one, Hazrat Ali Akbar, to go towards the battlefield. How did Imam Hussein bid farewell to him? It's amazing. You've heard it all. You hear during the first 10 nights of Muharram al-Haram that our Imam said to him, go seek permission and bid farewell to the women who have raised you, made you what you are today. So he goes, and by difficulty he comes out of the tent. And when he comes out of the tent, then he bids farewell to his father because of the shauq that he has, that he wants to go and perform this jihad for his father. He bids farewell and he goes on his horse, although Imam Hussein had requested that, oh Ali Akbar, as you're making your way towards the battlefield, just turn around to keep an eye contact with me. Hazrat Ali Akbar, with the enthusiasm that he has to go to the battlefield, he forgets to look back. And then when he forgets to look back, he hears that someone is stumbling and coming after him. And then when he turns around, he sees his old father stumbling and running after him. He said, oh, my father, we had already bid farewell. Why is it that you're still coming after me? Imam Hussein then said, O Ali Akbar, if you were Sahib Awlad, then you would understand my feeling. Allah la'natullah al-qawmi al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, gives the tawfiq and ability to follow the example of Hazrat Ali Asghar, Hazrat Ali Akbar, Jawanan of this battlefield of Karbala, the way they set examples for us, especially the youth looking up to Hazrat Ali Akbar. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq that we are able to adopt his ways of life in every aspect of our life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam, make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Mutawajjih ziyarat. Assalamu alaikum ya Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum ya Nabi Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Habib Allah, assalamu alaikum ya Khiyaratallah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya waritha Adam Safatillah, assalamu alaikum ya waritha Nuhin Nabiyillah, assalamu alaikum ya waritha Ibrahim Khalilillah. Assalamu alaikum ya waritha Musa Kalimillah, assalamu alaikum ya waritha Isa Ruhillah, assalamu alaikum ya waritha Muhammadin Habibillah, assalamu alaikum ya waritha Amir al-Mu'minina Waliyillah, assalamu alaikum ya ibn Muhammad al-Mustafa, assalamu alaikum ya ibn Ali al-Murtada, assalamu alaikum ya ibn Fatima al-Zahra, assalamu alaikum ya ibn Khadijah al-Kubra, assalamu alaikum ya Thar Allah wa ibn Tharihi wal witr al-mawtur, ashhadu anna qad aqamta as-salat wa atayta az-zakat wa marta bil ma'ruf wa nahayta 'anil munkar وطاعة الله ورسوله حتى تاك اليقين فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أن كنت في نورا في الأصحاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها وأشهد أنك من داعم الدين وأركان المؤمنين وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والهجة على أهل الدنيا وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم أمري لأمركم متبع صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم زيادة الأكبر. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم، لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الشهداء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحبه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وبدا، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصر، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيادة العباس. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد أن لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي ولعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر المدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل وألهاكم الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليكم من الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليكم الشمس الشموس وعنيس النفوس المدفون بعد توسل ابن موسى ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليكم الصاحب والأسر والزمان، السلام عليكم إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليكم شريك القرآن، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته. Offer 2 rakat namaz for the ziyarat of Imam Hussein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.